I'm going to repeat this video, though, okay? So we can catch it from the beginning. All right, so we're going to talk about Garcia's study on taste aversions. Here we go.
Garcia conducted a two-part experiment on the development of taste aversion for rats. In the first part, thirsty rats were provided with saccharine-flavoured water paired with a bright light and a clicking noise, which was originally the neutral stimulus. There were two groups of rats. One was electrically shocked, which was the unconditioned stimulus, which reflexively evoked a pain response, pain being the unconditioned response. The second group was exposed to radiation via X-rays, which was the unconditioned stimulus, which reflexively evoked illness, which was the unconditioned response for that group. So, in response to this, the actual rats developed a taste aversion to saccharine-flavoured water. So their conditioned response was avoiding the saccharine-flavoured water. All it required was the smell of it, and they'd avoid it. So the saccharine flavour was the conditioned stimulus, which, after one trial, the rats avoided the conditioned response. Then Garcia conducted part two of the experiment, in which the rats were offered water by one or two procedures, either saccharine-flavoured water with no light or noise, or unflavoured water paired with the light and the noise. The group of rats that were originally shocked, that is, the electric shocks were paired with the light and click noise, they now avoided the water when it was preceded by the light and the click noise. The light and the click noise being the conditioned stimulus, the conditioned response being the rats avoiding the water. That is, the association had been made between the light and the click sound with pain. The second group of rats that became ill from the radiation, that is, there was a pairing of the radiation with the saccharine-flavoured water, they now avoided water that had that saccharine smell. So just on the smell, conditioned stimulus, the smell of the saccharine-flavoured water, they would not drink it again. The association had been made between the smell of the saccharine water and actually becoming ill by that radiation unconditioned stimulus. For both groups of rats, a taste aversion had been conditioned. So, Garcia's conclusion that rats had learned to avoid the unconditioned stimulus, whether it be an electric shock or nausea from the drug, by avoiding the water that was paired with this. Thus, rats, and indeed we can generalise these results to animals, associate stimuli in ways that foster and enhance our survival of the fittest.
Okay.
Video about okay.
All right, so, again, do you understand that they conditioned the rats with taste aversions? He was trying to show the conditioning of taste aversions. So, drinking that water, that saccharine, that sweet water, made them nauseous if they were exposed to radiation, or had a painful shock if there was a light or a clicking sound associated with it. But it was mainly showing when you look at the radiation, which they're not going to realize that they're being radiated, right? They're just going to drink the water and get ill. That developed a taste aversion. So Garcia was able to show the strength of taste aversions in that study. Okay. Any questions about any forms of classical conditioning? All right, so this is what we're going to do. The next section has to do with operant conditioning.
Configurations.
And I want to show you a little clip about operant conditioning. Okay, here we go. To introduce operant conditioning, let's look at Big Bang Theory.
Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon, I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please.
chocolates as positive reinforcement for what you consider correct behavior.
Very good.
Sheldon, you can't train my girlfriend like a lab rat.
Actually, it turns out I can.
Well, you shouldn't.
There's just no pleasing you, is there, Leonard? You weren't happy with my previous approach to dealing with her, so I decided to employ operant conditioning techniques, building on the works of Thorndike and B.F. Skinner. Yet by this time next week, I believe I can have her jumping out of a pool, balancing a beach ball on her nose.
No, this has to stop now.
I'm not suggesting we really make her jump out of a pool. I thought the bazinga was implied. We're just tweaking her personality. It's sanding off the rough edges, if you will.
No, you're not sanding Penny.
Are you saying that I am forbidden from applying a harmless, scientifically valid protocol that will make our lives better?
Yes, you're forbidden.
Bad, Leonard. You know, using positive reinforcement techniques, I could train that behavior out of her in a week.
No,
If you let me use negative reinforcement, I can get it done before we go to bed.
you're not squirting her in the face with water.
No, of course not. We're talking very mild electric shocks. No tissue damage whatsoever.
Forget it.
Oh, come on. You can't tell me that you're not intrigued about the possibility of building a better girlfriend.
Well, Penny's qualities, both good and bad, are what make her who she is.
You mean like that high-pitched, irritating laugh?
Yes.
You wouldn't prefer a throaty chuckle?
You're not changing how Penny laughs.
No, that would be incongruous. I was going to lower the whole voice to a more pleasing register.
Oh, sorry, guys. That girl is freaky.
Come again?
Freaky.
Freaky?
Yeah, freaky.
Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to make some warm milk and then turn in. I trust if you two are planning on engaging in amorous activities, you'll keep the decibel level to a minimum.
Of course.
Thank you.
Unbelievable.
All right, so now that we have set up our operant conditioning section, let's talk about it. Okay, so operant conditioning. Operant conditioning has to do with punishments and reinforcement, so we're going to talk about that. All right. We already did classical conditioning in our everyday lives, but here we go. In operant conditioning, the difference between operant conditioning and classical conditioning is operant conditioning is not passive learning. Okay, the learner is not passive in operant conditioning. So remember, in classical conditioning, it focuses on whether one stimulus predicts another to cause a response. In operant conditioning, it focuses on whether the behavior is rewarded or punished. You learn from whether the behavior is rewarded or punished. What? It's mixed between mine and his.
I like how the guy's in modern clothes,
But it's locked up, yes.
yeah.
So the law of effect has to do with Thorndike. Edward Thorndike was someone who first studied operant conditioning. And what he said was that rewarded behavior is likely to recur. That's not hard imagine, rewarded behavior is likely to occur. When a behavior is rewarded, it continues, and when it's punished, it discontinues. When a behavior is rewarded, it continues, and when it's punished, it discontinues. He locked cats in a cage to study this, and he said that behavior changes because of its consequences. And rewards are going to strengthen behavior, and if the consequences are unpleasant, the stimulus-reward connection will weaken. And the whole process was called instrumental learning. So if you reward something, it strengthens, and if you punish, it weakens. And if the consequences, again, kind of like a punishment, but if the consequences are unpleasant, the stimulus-reward connection will weaken. Instrumental learning. I don't know if this link is working. I will check. Let's see. Instrumental learning? It does appear to be working.
But how is a new skill learned? That was a question which began to fascinate Thorndike. To answer it, he built some ingenious puzzle boxes from which cats could only escape by operating latches.
And in you go.
The cat appears to be very clever in engineering its escape, solving the problem with a deftly placed paw and a push of its nose. But Thorndike didn't believe that an animal, even a clever cat, understands the consequences of its behavior. When he placed a cat in the puzzle box for the first time, Thorndike was unable to see any evidence of flashes of insight. The successful actions appeared first by chance. He proved that the apparent cleverness arose by trial and error, and used graphs to measure the rate of learning. A well-practiced cat quickly recalls the actions that help it escape to its reward of food. If an action brings a reward, Thorndike believed that that action becomes stamped into the mind. In his thesis, he explained further his ideas about learning, that behavior changes because of its consequences. He called this his law of effect, which explained how even wild creatures develop new habits.
All right, so that's Thorndike. So when a behavior is rewarded, it continues, and when it is punished, it discontinues. Okay, what is going on here? Are we coming back? Let's go. All right, so B.F. Skinner. Yeah. Here we go. So B.F. Skinner is the most prevalent, prominent psychologist associated with operant conditioning. Okay? His famous Skinner box. Okay? He believed that you could nurture someone into basically whatever you wanted. And he used his Skinner box to prove his concepts. The Skinner box. Skinner box. I'm going to show you the Skinner box.
Wait, what do you mean nurture?
Basically, you could teach someone and shape their behavior into whatever you want, to whatever kind of person you want. Yes. Skinner box. Okay? Alright. I'm going to explain the Skinner box and show you this video. Okay.
Garcia conducted a
That's Garcia,
two-part
that's not the Skinner
experiment
box. Hold
on
on.
the development of taste aversion for rats. In the first part,
Yes,
thirsty
that's
rats.
not it. So that means we're having a problem with the link. Let's see. Let's go back and see if I can get the right link to work. Let's try it again. Still going to Garcia.
Garcia
I have the Skinner box. Hold on. Alright, let me show you. Oh, there it is. The Skinner box. Let's see if this works.
While some scientists engineer shiny
Oh, yeah.
new consumer goods for an eager public, Harvard psychologist B.F. Skinner seeks nothing less than the engineering of human nature. In experiments with subjects as simple as pigeons, Skinner declares that with the right social engineering, we can create a new breed of human being. Skinner is firmly in the behaviorist tradition pioneered by John Watson in the 1920s. Like Watson, Skinner contends that with the right tools, we can predict and control behavior.
Skinner really inherited the mantle from Watson of behaviorism in this country. But it's kind of interesting to think about how there's a subtle difference in the way they went about it. Watson, as we know, ended up becoming an advertising executive, ended up embracing the American value system as it existed. Skinner was different. Skinner was a visionary. Skinner felt that through behaviorism, he could influence the world towards a greater humanity. Not meet humanity where it was, but take humanity to a new place through the principles of behaviorism.
Picking up where Watson left off, Skinner wants to do the rigorous science to prove that environment is everything. Change the environment, he argues, and you can change the individual. Or in Skinner's case, the pigeon.
Skinner himself was a born gadgeteer. He had, in his own early years, as a boy, for example, he developed ways of sorting ripe, I think it was cranberries, from unripe cranberries. He invented a cannon that would shoot things over his neighbor's fence. This was the kind of man he was. He was developing new ways to do everyday things in ways that were more comfortable, more efficient.
During World War II, Skinner had developed a pigeon guidance device for the U.S. military. While the Russians had dogs carrying bombs, and the Swedes had seals to blow up mines, Skinner had a plan of his own. Teaching pigeons to guide missiles to an enemy target. At the time, however, the military had no missiles to guide. But Skinner's pigeon research did not go to waste. He develops a system called operant conditioning to prove that a behavior will be repeated by a subject when rewarded. Repetition leads to reinforcement. Reinforcement to changes in behavior.
This hungry pigeon is moving about more or less at random. Sometimes it turns its head to the left. When it does, we reinforce that movement by giving the pigeon access to a dish of grain.
Skinner then waits for it to turn further. Again, more food. Ultimately, the pigeon will turn in a complete circle, having learned that only when it turns will it be rewarded.
What Skinner was able to do in very carefully controlled studies with animal models was they demonstrate that whole chains of behaviors could be built step by step so that literally you could teach a pigeon to do complicated behaviors that no one would have predicted possible.
And Skinner believes that if it works for pigeons, why not people? In Skinner's mind, behavior is behavior, up and down the evolutionary scale, and it is all learned. One of the great successes is in education. People are taught to do more complicated tasks than anyone had thought possible by breaking down behavior into small steps and giving positive reinforcement along the way.
The essence of Skinner's
Don't
work
ask me what
was
they're doing, they don't really know.
manipulate the environment in ways that would permit us to produce any kind of behavior that we wished, and we could develop individuals in ways that made every possible future open to them.
The idea that anything is possible.
All right. So,
B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning chamber experiments produced valuable.
okay. So Skinner created this box where if the pigeon did certain things, it would get food, and use that to shape behavior. Okay, and to get them to do what they wanted.
Data.
Okay. And they did this with rats too. The classic Skinner box. Okay. So there was even an electric grid that he was able to get the rats to go across to get the food. So he was able to shape certain behaviors with a Skinner box. So just know that. That's called shaping. All right? And that's how the Skinner box would work. The Skinner box showed that you could give rewards, and shape an animal's behavior. Also, those behaviors, learning slowly, one piece after another, like getting that pigeon to turn to the left, that's called chaining. It's another form of learning called chaining, because you're slowly, it's like adding another link to the chain until you get the behavior you want. Okay. All right. Now, moving on. Talking about this should really be how it reinforces behavior. A reinforcer is anything that increases behavior. And there are two types. This is where it gets a little confusing. There is positive reinforcement when you add something pleasant. Okay? Positive reinforcement is when you add something pleasant. When you were little and you were in elementary school, you might have gotten to pick something from the treasure box, right? Anybody have treasure boxes? Yes, good old treasure boxes, right? So you get to add something pleasant. Negative reinforcement is not adding a punishment. This is where students get confused. Negative reinforcement is taking away something unpleasant. So it's like subtracting something unpleasant. Subtracting something unpleasant. Yeah. All right. So, positive reinforcement, giving them a treat. Negative reinforcement, would be adding this, giving you a fan if you're hot. This takes away the unpleasantness of being hot. Okay? If you're cold, so here, all right, when you take something away, you remove something unpleasant. So if you are, let me think about how I want to give you a modern day example. Oh, I'm going to show you. We're going to go through it. Let me go through this, and I'm going to, I think is it the next slide that we talk about? Yes, positive or negative. Here, look at this. Okay? Just turn off the seatbelt alarm. Very good one. That is a good one because it's annoying, right? That's a negative. We're taking away something unpleasant. That's very good. It's a good example.
What if you're given something? What if you add something unpleasant?
When you punishment. So when you add So when you add something unpleasant, it switches to punishment. So we're going to talk about that. All right. So positive or negative? Putting your seatbelt on, is that positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement? It's negative if you're trying to get rid of that sound, right? Getting a kiss for doing the dishes. Positive reinforcement. Faking sick to avoid AP Psych class.
Negative.
It's negative because you're taking away something unpleasant if you think AP Psych is unpleasant. Okay. Having a headache and taking an aspirin. You're taking away something negative by adding something. See what I'm saying? Like, you're adding something to take away something negative. That's unpleasant, so no, it's positive.
Well, no, because like the aspirin itself doesn't give you a good feeling. It removes the pain. So you're.
That's true. So you're right. I would say it's negative there. Very good. All right. Here. Thank you. Studying for a test. Are you adding something pleasant? Good green. Or it's what? Or it's taking away maybe anxiety of a test because you're feeling more prepared?
Probably both.
Okay. All right, here we go. Breaking out of jail.
Negative.
Negative because you're taking away something unpleasant. Okay, do you see what I'm saying? All right. That's in terms of reinforcement. Now, punishment. Slightly different. Punishment is always meant to decrease a behavior. We have positive punishment, which is adding something unpleasant, or negative punishment, which is taking away something pleasant. So this is where it gets a little confusing. So positive punishment is adding something unpleasant, and negative punishment is removing something pleasant. So punishment is if it's positive, it's adding something. It's negative, it's subtracting something. So here is where there was an error in the Big Bang Theory clip that I showed you. Okay? So the chocolates was positive reinforcement, correct? But the spraying of the water would have been what?
That would have been
Positive punishment, not negative reinforcement. Because negative reinforcement would be taking away something unpleasant. So that is where there was an error in that clip. It would be a form of positive punishment. Because you are adding something unpleasant. So, for example, a spanking, adding something unpleasant. Okay? Being assigned a chore that you don't like as punishment. Adding something unpleasant, right? Negative punishment. Losing your Netflix privileges. Not being allowed to game it. Okay? removal of something pleasant, losing your phone, losing your ability to drive, right? It's subtracting something. Or, what if I'm going to ground you? You're in trouble, I'm grounding you. That's positive. You're adding something unpleasant, right?
You take it away the circle.
Or you could. That's true. So what do you guys think? Do you understand these? They make sense? You can get a little confused with negative. The negative one is a little bit hard, right? Because we think positive punishment would be, positive and unpleasant don't seem to go together. But positive punishment is adding something unpleasant. Negative punishment is removal of something pleasant. Okay? All right. And punishment works best when it's done immediately after the behavior. This is why when your animal has an accident in the house and hours later you discover it and then you take the animal over to it and do all those things like rub its nose in it and all that stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? It's not associating the behavior. Same thing with children, unless they're very cognitively advanced. But punishment tends to work best when you're trying to shape behavior when you do the punishment right after the behavior. Yes?
Is this for all ages?
Well, obviously, the older you get, the more you're able to space it out. But when you're talking about a toddler, a very small child, you need that to be pretty quickly associated, right? Too far of a gap and they can't associate it. Okay, so that's punishment. Let me see which clip this.
Commander, we suspect your wife is a German spy. Insane. If she is, you will...
Oh, we already saw this one. I don't think this is a different clip. Oh, it is. No, it is. It's a different clip.
Operant conditioning and punishment. Maybe we can come up with a punishment for straying off topic.
Not getting to see a wizard pigeon ping pong comes to mind.
We could snap a rubber band on our wrists every time we get sidetracked.
Not bad. You know, in medieval times, idle chatter was punished with a device called the scold's bridle. It's an iron cage that's locked around the head and pierces the tongue.
Only we had one.
Oh, I'll check Amazon.
Okay, so we agree. Whenever someone takes us off topic, they get their arm hair yanked off.
I really don't know that happen.
Positive
Because
punishment.
my eyebrows will think I've been cheating or not.
What benefits of quantum coupling?
Boy, no question. Who decides if someone's gone off topic?
I think it'll be pretty clear. If not, we'll take a vote. Oh, also.
Ow! We didn't vote.
We didn't have to. That was clearly a tangent. Now, come on, back to work. If we're leaning towards quantum coupling,
You said quantum coupling. That made me think of the show Quantum Leap. That's a tangent and it's your fault.
ridiculous.
Sheldon, I vote that is not a tangent.
Yeah, thank you. And now I owe you one.
That was your fault.
That is a lot of hair. And now I'm going to hear it from Jenny.
Everyone stop. This was a stupid idea. Negative reinforcement isn't working.
I think you mean positive punishment. Negative reinforcement is the removal of a positive stimulus. It's a common mistake.
Negative reinforcement is really wrong.
Well, it's used incorrectly all the time. Even Bill Murray makes that mistake in the first scene of Ghostbusters.
No way. Not Bill Murray. I'm studying the effect of negative reinforcement on ESP. Bill Murray did get it wrong.
Jump ahead to the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
No!
Leonard's right. We can't just jump ahead. We have to watch the whole movie.
All right, so reinforcement. All right, so question is, how do we use operant conditioning? How do we really use it? Okay. sometimes we use a process called shaping, right? So this is when you reinforce small steps to get to your desired behavior. Much like the pigeon, right? Getting the pigeon to turn around. So if you want to train your dog to get slippers, every time they get a little bit closer, you keep rewarding behaviors. First, you find the slippers. Then you put them in their mouth. Then they'll bring them to you. You chain the different steps, okay? And this is called shaping. Shaping. So reinforcing small steps on the way to a desired behavior, okay? To get Barry to become a better student, you need to do more than give him a massage when he gets good grades. You have to give him massages when he studies for 10 minutes or when he completes his homework. Small steps to get to a desired behavior. Okay? Small steps. Yes.
So like when you're training a dog with slippers and you keep giving him rewards the closer he gets, once he's learned the behavior, do you have to continue giving him treats every once in a while so he'll continue doing it?
That would be part of this, yes. We'll talk about that in a minute. That would be part of the reinforcement. Okay? So, in order to do this, as I said, ladies, think about this when you're trying to train a husband to do things that you want. I know, yes, that's technically manipulation, but it works quite well. So start training them. Like, oh, you look like, I think there is nothing more attractive than a man doing the dishes. I just think that is the hottest thing on the planet.
Great.
So, thank you, Caroline, making me uncomfortable. So anyway, so when they start to go and put dishes in the dishwasher, oh my gosh, be sweet. Like, keep shaping until you get what you want. Okay? Just, it works 21 years.
That's just neurotic. So he does the dishes because he hates looking at them.
Well, but I also reinforce that. I reinforce laundry. I
care
like
what
all of those things. All right.
Lovely.
Chaining behaviors. Subjects are taught a number of responses successively in order to get the reward, and that is, I already saw the rat chaining behaviors, but no, here's the pigeon. There's an example of chaining behaviors. It's successive approximations. So we saw that with the pigeon turning to the left, right? It's a chaining. You kind of train them to do one little step, and you reinforce that step, and then you reinforce the next until they get to the desired end, okay? In order to get the reward. So it's just a chain. All right. Here are some areas in operant conditioning that you have the exact same terminology as classical conditioning. Okay? Acquisition. Okay? You have acquisition in operant conditioning. You have acquisition in classical conditioning. So, you have a child. You want to reinforce dancing by giving lollipops when they dance. That is, what would that be? The lollipop would be a what?
A positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. How could acquisition be used? So what is acquisition? When the lollipop is associated with dancing, right? That would be acquisition. Extinction would occur when, the child dances and you're not giving them lollipop. Okay? Spontaneous recovery would occur when a lollipop gets the child to dance. Okay? Generalization. I'll give you candy. Any kind of candy. Jolly Rancher, child dances. Discrimination, the child knows the difference between one type of candy and another to dance. Okay? So that you have the same type of thing. The same terminology applies. Same type of terminology applies. Alright, primary versus secondary reinforcers. Primaries are unlearned, such as getting food when you are hungry. These are things that are naturally rewarding. Yeah. I know. Thank you. Oh, I know. You want me to do my thing. Give me a second. I want to do. Let me get to this real quick. All right. Secondary reinforcers are things that you learn that have value. So, in other words, money is a secondary reinforcer. Okay. It's called a generalized reinforcer because you can trade it for anything. Money is one of those. These are conditioned reinforcers through learned associations with primary reinforcers. So in a Skinner's box, when a light comes on, it signals that food's about to be dropped. That's a secondary reinforcer. These are conditioned reinforcers. And that's through learned association with primary reinforcers. Okay. Something that's not, right. Correct. So a token economy is a good example. Okay. Token economy, every time behavior is performed, a token is given, a reward, a sticker, things like that. You get so many, you get prizes, right? Those are reinforcers. The famous treasure box, right? They do this in prisons, institutionalized homes, things like that. Rewards. All right. I'm going to stop here. Let's stop the video.